A new food trend conquers Germany. Fresh, hip, and very trendy. Superfood.
For me, the term superfood is about what's good for the body.
Quinoa, goji berries, chia seeds. Superfoods are supposed to contain a lot of nutrients.
The question is, what does our body need? There is maximum confusion. And there are now some products indicating you need this. If you eat this, you will get well, or you won't get sick. And that's not true.
What does the hype about superfood mean for the people in the countries of origin? Does the ever-increasing demand even destroy entire ecosystems?
If nothing changes, then we're heading for a catastrophe here, and the region will turn into a desert.
As so often, the trend comes from America. In the meantime, they also exist in many German cities, superfood restaurants. Dishes with exotic ingredients such as avocado, chia, and quinoa are served here. They promise they make you slim, healthy, and happy. And that's what the customers of this restaurant in Bochum, Germany like.
This looks healthy, and you know you're doing something good for your body.
I like to eat a lot, but also healthy. And for me, the mixture is perfect here.
Because there are a lot of healthy things here, and it's a change from the other food here in town.
Florian Klar recognized the trend and opened his business 1 year ago. He developed the recipes himself, his approach to offer a healthy alternative to fatty fast food.
This is also one of the reasons why we're here, because it's now easier to eat an unhealthy diet than a healthy one. We want to change that, and with the term superfood, you get more customers than if you call yourself Bistro for Healthy Nutrition.
The food is served in so-called bowls here. Warm ingredients combined with cold ones, most of them uncooked. The food should look appetizing, pepped up with an exotic touch.
The nice thing about such a bowl is that it consists many individual components. That makes it very colorful and pretty. But it's also very good for the body, because each individual ingredient brings along many advantageous minerals and vitamins. Simply a broad nutrient spectrum. These are our kidney bean bowls. Chickpeas. Here we have quinoa, also known as Inca grain. It comes from South America. It's a grain that's cooked with water and contains a lot of nutrients, so a lot of healthy proteins.
But what's really behind the promises of superfoods? One example, the protein content of quinoa is comparable to that of domestic millet. However, quinoa contains more fiber. The iron content of millet, though, is more than twice as high as that of exotic quinoa. Florian Klar buys many ingredients at the Bochum wholesale market. Domestic products, but also exotic products, such as sweet potatoes. The freshness of the products is an important criterion for him when he's shopping.
I need something herbal.
In his menu, Florian focuses on a mixture: regional fruit and vegetable varieties and exotics from overseas.
Every fruit and every vegetable has its own nutritional composition. That's why it's so nice to combine the local with the exotic, because many diverse nutrients, vitamins and minerals come together, which form a very complex food, and that's great for the body.
But healthy does not necessarily mean sustainable. The superfoods on our plates mostly come from distant countries and have covered thousands of kilometers. A good example is quinoa. One of the main cultivating countries is Bolivia. In the area around the salt lake, the quinoa real grows, the best-selling variety in Germany. The grain is also called Inca grain. Already 6,000 years ago, the indigenous peoples cultivated it in the highlands. The nutrient-rich grain has always been the central food of the people here. Agricultural economist Joachim Milz advises companies on sustainable agriculture. He's been observing the development of quinoa cultivation in the region for years.
On these relatively salty and poor soils with little rainfall, we find a crop that can deliver fantastic yields. And in connection with the llamas, it's an ingenious or ideal form of production, and for this region's economy.
But this is changing. Wild bushes used to provide food for the llamas and protect the soil from erosion. After the harvest, the animals came to graze. The llama dung provided new nutrients. Since the quinoa boom, the maximum has been extracted from the soil and the bushes have been cleared.
The fact that 150 to 200,000 hectares of llama pastures have been ploughed over for quinoa, that was shocking for me.
Nothing but quinoa fields for countless kilometers. Since the rising demand, the cultivation areas have expanded massively. Deforestation has caused the areas to lack the natural vegetation, which has so far protected the soils from wind erosion.
When you walk along here, you can observe that actually only such short-lived herbs have emerged. The soil is basically completely unprotected. Ultimately, they boost the emergence of a highland desert here, and the production conditions for the farmers will no longer be there, which means that people will have to go somewhere else.
The change can already be felt. The yield of the soil is decreasing from year to year. The first farmers give up cultivation, go to the cities, and get by with unskilled labor. Not only in Bolivia is the desolation of the landscape by superfood monocultures blatant.
Basically, the problem we see here with quinoa is a generalizable worldwide phenomenon. One example, avocado. Avocado superfood. Avocados are cultivated extensively in monocultures, and the consequences are in principle the same as here with the quinoa. The moment the business is at the forefront, short-term economic interests take priority over everything else. And hardly anyone really thinks about what will become of these ecosystems or of this habitat.
As with the quinoa here, the massive demand for avocado has also led to problems in the producing countries. Within 10 years, the number of hectares of avocado harvested increased by about 30%. 1 kilo of avocado consumes 1,500 liters of water. Domestic vegetables such as lettuce or tomatoes consume significantly less. Cultivation in huge monocultures, especially in dry regions, ensures high yields only in the short term. Traditional quinoa cultivation is based on a different principle: less land, better quality. Robia cultivates a small plot of land. It takes her 2 weeks to harvest the field by hand. Since quinoa is grown everywhere comfortably with a tractor in the lowlands now, hardly anyone wants to do the hard work on the slopes. Even though this is the origin of quinoa cultivation.
Already our ancestors worked like this on the field. Our grandparents taught our parents, and our parents taught us. Every year we have to plow this up.
Are these quinoa roots?
Yes, exactly, the old roots.
Do you leave these branches here?
We plow up this dried grass. I use these tools here. That's our way of working the soil.
In principle, it's a traditional system that's been practiced for centuries. I think that even here there's room for improvement in terms of sustainability. But compared to what is machine ploughed in the pampas, this is the ecologically adapted one.
Here on the slopes between two harvests, the soil gets time to regenerate. The plants are large, the individual grains thick.
Look, this plant here carries very well. It has particularly beautiful grains. Look how beautifully ripe it is. According to our criteria, these are the best grains. We store them and use them as seeds.
Joachim Mills brought quinoa from the German supermarket. He wants to show the producers how the grain they grow here is sold and consumed in Europe.
What's it like for you that quinoa has suddenly been discovered as a superfood in Germany and Europe?
Our product was not known in the past. It was not known that it contained so much protein. Word hadn't got around yet. It used to cost less than rice and noodles. Quinoa was said to be worth less. As producers, we are a bit proud that quinoa is now known all over the world.
The farmers compare the quinoa from the German supermarket with the grains they have just harvested on their own field.
It says it's class 1, but even our class 2 is bigger than this. I'd say it's class 3. And these little ones here, they are nothing. That's for the chickens.
Rubia is ready for today with this field. Further up the slope, she has another plot of ripe grain that needs to be harvested. When the superfood boom started in 2014, the price for quinoa exploded. At that time, even small villages like Cerro Grande profited from this trend. Only 7 families live here. The community was able to make purchases, afford a small machine to sort the grains. This makes work easier. But already in 2015, the price collapsed again.
How much money would you have to get for the quinoa from the slope to make the production worthwhile for you?
They'd have to pay us a lot more. Otherwise, the production costs won't be covered. And even worse, it's not enough to feed our families.
The development of the quinoa price in Bolivia resembles a roller coaster ride. In 2014, the highest price was reached with over $3,000 per ton. Just 3 years later, it fell below the value paid before the boom began.
The criticism is that the expansion of quinoa in the pampas has also led to the fact that the quinoa price fluctuates so strongly. And the farmers here, who are still producing on slopes, suffer from the fact that they can't compete with them and that they don't get paid differently, despite the effort they have on slopes.
Sustainable cultivation, good quality. Yet this tried and tested method of cultivation is in danger of extinction. The consumers in Europe know little of the problems of the farmers. The superfood range in supermarkets is constantly growing. The turnover achieved with Superfood in Germany rose from 1.4 million euros in 2014 to 42.6 million euros in 2016. The bestseller is chia seeds, which account for 62% of turnover. But what should one buy with such a large selection?
The consumer is completely confused and doesn't know what to do. And that's why he's quite open to messages of faith. It's just like religion. I come along with a miracle, and people are ready to believe it in search of orientation. And that's the concept of superfoods.
Nutritionist Matthias Riedel inspects the superfood offer of a Hamburg supermarket. Ginger, dried berries, chia. The customer finds a large selection of supposedly healthy products here, but the list of ingredients shows what's really inside.
One would
assume that this is a natural shelf, but here I see cranberries. You don't see it at first glance, but 40% sugar were added, and sunflower oil, which isn't the best oil. And so this cranberry pack has more sugar than a bar of chocolate, almost 70%. So anything but healthy.
Chia seeds contain valuable ingredients, but mostly they are only consumed in very small quantities.
Superfoods distract from the actual problem. The German's diet is not healthy enough, and this unhealthy diet won't change adding 15 grams of chia seeds. But that's exactly what happens. Chia seeds are a kind of indulgence trade, an alibi for an otherwise unhealthy diet. Especially with chia seeds, the question arises, 15 grams supply even less omega-3 fatty acids than, for example, a good portion of walnuts.
The German linseed would also be an alternative to the exotic chia. Its protein content is even higher. The proportion of polyunsaturated fatty acids is about the same for both. Only when it comes to calcium, linseed cannot compete. The industry wants to get involved in the superfood trend. Even tried and tested products such as ready-to-serve cereals are spiced up with exotic grains and berries.
Das hier sind zwei Beispiele, wie es nicht gut ist.
These are two examples of what's not good. Far too much sugar and a very small amount of cranberries to give the impression, boy, fruity. The percentage of cranberries used here is well below 5%. You hardly notice it. But what is important here is the high sugar content. This is simply unhealthy and neutralizes any positive effect of the dried cranberry fruit.
The cranberry's native alternative is the German cowberry. The sugar content of raw fruits is lower in cranberries, but because the cranberry is more acidic, more sugar is added to the cranberry than to the cowberry when it is dried. The term superfood is not registered. It suggests a positive effect on health to the buyer, but this is not always the case.
A good example, 100% natural doesn't mean 100% healthy. This small portion for €2 supplies 47 grams of sugar per 100 gram. So this small bag alone consists of nearly 25 grams sugar. This is the World Health Organization's highest recommendation. So there's not much sugar left to consume during the day.
The diet physician pleads for domestic fruit and vegetable, even if that's less trendy.
Our products have an image problem, and we need to educate people more about how valuable these fruit colors are for us and what effects we have from our local products. Leek plants, for example, have an anti-inflammatory effect, whether it's chives, garlic, or leek.
For almost all exotics, there are domestic alternatives that don't have to travel thousands of kilometers before they reach the supermarket shelf. And when it comes to nutrients, they're a good choice. The goji berry has 7 times more calories than the domestic black currant. This is mainly due to the high sugar content of the exotic fruit. In a vitamin C comparison, the currant even beats the goji fruit by far. Exotic fruits often come from countries in which the cultivation standards deviate from the strict German regulations. Various measurements showed that superfood contained pesticides and heavy metals. At the Bremen Institute for Residue Analysis, foodstuffs are repeatedly tested for hazardous substances. These include superfoods such as goji berries.
During pesticide screening, we examine about 200 different pesticides. These are insecticides, fungicides and herbicides. In the case of heavy metals, we're investigating 4 heavy metals: lead, cadmium, arsenic and mercury. In the past, we've mainly been able to detect insecticides in higher quantities.
Not only goji berries were affected. Samples from other institutes showed there were also residues of pesticides and mineral oil in raw cocoa, chia seeds and moringa powder. Problems with pesticides are not known in the quinoa fields. Here, they often even grow organic certified crops, but the production is not yet sustainable. Tractors dig up the dry soils. With growing demand, the farmers expanded the cultivation from the slopes to the lowlands more and more. Joachim Mills is concerned if things go on like this, there will be no quinoa at all here one day. The farmers report to him that the soils already bring less yield from year to year.
But the consequences of drawing conclusions from this are missing. Above all, what can we actually do differently? That's what it's all about. Not to say, okay, stop plowing all that up, but rather, how can we produce the quinoa without destroying the whole region here?
Joachim Mills is on his way to the community of Rodeo, which also cultivates its quinoa with the help of machines in the area. The quinoa boom has also revived the village here. Many came back from the big cities. Life here was worthwhile again. Houses were rebuilt. A modest prosperity in the form of tractors and simple machines arrived. Also, the village traditions are maintained again, with their own costumes, music and rituals.
The great demand for quinoa has had an extremely positive effect on our community life. Our standard of living and our quality of life have improved enormously.
In order not to lose all this again, the cultivation method of quinoa has to change fundamentally here in Rodeo. Although the cultivation is based on organic criteria, the natural vegetation, which is so useful for the soil, has been cleared down to a few remnants.
What you can see here is this tola, which forms its roots here. And here is a root that is still firmly anchored. It goes several meters deep into the ground. In this extremely dry region, it's one of the most important species to maintain soil fertility, to stop wind erosion, and to keep water in the system.
If the downward trend continues, the harvest here will soon no longer be worthwhile. Joachim Mills discusses with the farmers how they can secure the yields of the fields in the long term.
Here, the soil is beautifully fertile. Because of them here, we must produce the quinoa with this. It's like fertilizer.
And at the same time, it's food for the llama?
That's the best thing for the quinoa. We just have to take all this wood and sprinkle it on the field when we sow it. We should try that.
Wir müssen eigentlich alles produzieren an Biomasse, an Dünger.
We actually have to produce everything in terms of biomass, fertilizer, in the plot itself. Then it's sustainable. And at the same time, we also have to reforest. So the skepticism is great. But this is always the case when we start with something new. But I notice that it's working. People are listening. And such a place here makes me optimistic.
In the small town of Salinas, preparations are underway for a kind of market where the regional quinoa suppliers will exhibit their products. All the towns in the surrounding area are represented and display the food that is so important for the region. Joachim Mills seeks dialogue with the exhibitors. Many of them sell their products to Europe. Most of them produce their quinoa according to the criteria of organic labels. Joachim hopes that German buyers will soon not only demand organic but also sustainable quinoa cultivation.
It would be a good thing if this demand could be used to steer the direction of cultivation a little. We have to make it clear that the organic requirements are not sufficient to produce quinoa in a sustainable way.
Only if sustainability becomes the cultivation criterion for quinoa production can the ecosystems in Bolivia's highlands continue to exist and offer people and animals a long-term future. In Florian Klaas' superfood restaurant in Bochum, the exotics from overseas are extremely popular. It is the combination of the promising new and the health promise that attracts customers here.
If, for example, you start to compare linseed and chia seeds, it's about the same composition of nutrients. But linseed are, of course, much less sexy than chia seeds. Everyone must be aware that just because they eat 2 chia seeds, they don't become Superman.
Good marketing is part of the job. But Florian Klaas doesn't want to dazzle. Exoticism isn't everything to him.
We also live diversity. That means we work with exotics. But we also think it's just as good that there are superfoods here in the domestic sector. This could be the blueberry, for example, or a cauliflower that grows in Germany during the season. It can be broccoli that grows in Germany during the season. They are also superfoods for us without being exotic.
The Hamburg nutritionist Matthias Riedel agrees. Important nutrients don't have to come from distant countries. He considers the success story of exotic superfood to be exaggerated.
Superfoods are the philosopher's stone. They are the door opener for health and recovery. And that's why all these superfoods are overloaded. They have one thing in common when they come from the exotic world. They are often contaminated with pesticides, and they're very expensive. Of course, they also contain healthy substances, but so do our products here in Germany.
Apple, cabbage, onions, leeks are superfood at its best. If you want to eat healthy, all you have to do is go to the local weekly market. For it is still true, variety and freshness are the best guarantee for a healthy diet.